Hey team, my name's Anthony Lowe.
My name's Jennifer Solomon, and this is Team Chat, streaming on WNYU.org and on 89.1 FM.
So in Team Chat, we talk everything esports, business related, games related. We might even do game analysis, current events, and opinion segments in the future.
And we're also going to bring in guests every once in a while, and we're going to add to our team, and we'll have some industry professionals, professors, friends, and other mutuals that are very experienced in the esports scene and can provide interesting perspectives.
Yeah, that sounds great. So before we talk about esports, why don't we introduce ourselves first? Jenny, you want to start first?
Yes, thank you. So I'm a sports management student here at NYU, and I'd like to find myself in esports event management. I currently have, I'd say, a pretty good amount of experience in esports. But just to start off, I started playing League of Legends back in middle school, like around season 8 or 9, and
So like 2019?
yeah, okay, 2018.
Okay.
I was like 13 and I played 10 hours of League per day and I really enjoyed it. I played like 200 co op versus AI intro games because I was too scared to play against real people because it was my very first video game. And then I started playing Valorant. That was my very first FPS. I don't really play anything else, but I have dabbled in CSGO. I got 0 kills in Rainbow Six. Fortnite. I love
That's my
Fortnite.
game.
Fortnite Festival. And yeah, always open to things, but more on the esports side rather than the video games. I've taken a couple courses at NYU, like Business of Esports, and I did an advanced seminar in South Korea where I went to Riot Park, or League of Legends Park, which is owned by Riot Games, and I visited T1, the team, the 5-time world champion team. And I also was a student consultant for Cloud9, which is a North American esports organization. And currently, I work as an esports event assistant for NYU. So if you've ever seen like the League of Legends watch party for NYU Campus Rec, I was the one that did that. I'm looking forward to doing more. And yeah, I also have collegiate experience, so I play Valorant for one of the teams here at NYU, just like for fun. And that's how I met Anthony Lowe, the one and only Anthony Lowe. So maybe we should
Well,
talk about Anthony Lowe.
thank you for the great segue. Yeah, so I'm Anthony. I actually started playing video games since Jenny was talking about how she started playing video games. I started playing video games back in middle school. Oh, and I forgot to say, I am an NYU graduate. I graduated in 2024,
Oh
and
my god,
I majored
old
in
AF.
and I majored in psychology and journalism. I double majored, and currently I'm actually living in Chicago. I'm currently doing my graduate degree at Northwestern University, also focusing in sports media in journalism. So that's pretty fun. It's pretty cold over here in Chicago. But yeah, so I started playing video games when I was in middle school. My first game was League of Legends and Call of Duty. But I fell in love with League when I was really young, and ever since I watched my very first professional League of Legends game on YouTube, I kind of fell in love with esports and the whole idea of it. So, when I was younger, I always wanted to be an esports professional, but as I went to college and stuff like that, I kind of
College was your
transitioned.
limitation, not your
So,
skill.
yeah, okay. No, I would say
Yeah.
high school. I realized I was never going to be good enough to be a professional. But when I went to college, I truly wanted to change my career path, focusing around covering esports, becoming like a journalist, writing stories, doing game recaps. That's something that I am doing during my free time, and I have done in the past. So yeah, I used to write for online publications, and I still run a Twitter page and stuff like that. But you know,
But
um,
then you met me in
in
collegiate.
oh yeah, and when I went to NYU, I joined collegiate Valorant team, and that's where I met Jenny. And yeah, I guess since we're talking about collegiate Valorant or just the collegiate esports scene, we can talk a little bit about that since we both have experience in that. But how was your experience? You know, you're still part of it. I'm kind of transitioned away since I've graduated from NYU, but what's your current experience like in collegiate Valorant right now?
Current experience is very interesting. This is my first semester being the captain and doing everything by myself. Although I do have the previous captain helping me pretty often and like easing me into the position, it's still really interesting working with other students and specifically gamers. And you know how, it might be a little lazy or a little not very communicative, but overall, it's really good. Um, we won our placement 2 out of 3 placement games, which is 2 more games than we won last semester. But just to preface, the team that I play on is competitive, but mostly for fun. So that's a good, interesting thing about collegiate is it doesn't have to be like a collegiate sport. It can also like a division sport. It can be more for fun and to provide that competitive scene because playing ranked in Valorant and League is very different than having a set of 5 people that you play with once or twice a week and practice with. So, collegiate's a really good experience. I would say that I joined it just to make friends. So, I actually didn't play that much Valorant going into college, like towards the senior year of high school and beginning college. I was like, oh, it's time to step away from games. Probably like I'm gonna be so busy, but I wasn't that busy and brought my computer to school, joined one of the teams, and that's how I made a majority of my friends. So I'm really happy. I'm really satisfied with the collegiate experience. And there's also a lot of like, it's not just online stuff. So I feel that might be a common misconception because it's like, oh, just playing games online with friends. Like, how is that like a college experience or like any other club? But we actually have practices in person, and we actually had a LAN tournament that Anthony Lowe participated in, and I watched. So it was really cool. It was like NYU versus Columbia, and I was just a spectator, but I think it'd be interesting to hear what it was like playing.
Yeah, I guess on my side, I was a little bit more on the competitive side. I played when I was at NYU, I played on like the higher tier team, so the higher level players play. I play with those
Higher
people
level, not higher ranked.
sorry, higher ranked people.
Uh huh. Yeah.
But to be honest, I really miss coming from someone who's just stopped playing Valorant competitively and actually just stopped playing Valorant as a whole. You know, I still really miss playing as a team. You know, it's definitely an experience that not many people get to experience. And it's just a different feeling compared to playing by yourself at home and playing, you know, with a bunch of people, a bunch of your teammates on a stage or in a practice room. And that's something that I've definitely missed. There were, of course, ups and downs during my collegiate experience, but um, as Jenny said, I definitely agree with her when she said, you know, it's a great way to meet like-minded people who have an interest in video games and esports, and it's like a great opportunity to make friends, especially if you're heading into college, you know, not knowing what to do. It's definitely something that I feel like everyone should try because it's really an experience that you can only get in college if you don't have aspirations to become a pro gamer in the future, which I would assume not many people have. So, but you know, that's just my own opinion.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, Jenny, you did mention that I played on stage against Colombia, and that was last year. Wow, that was last year already, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Um, but little known fact about myself is that I was lucky enough to have a documentary made about my team when I played my last semester at NYU. Um, and one of the questions I remember when I was being interviewed for that documentary was, is esports a sport? Um, I have my own answer, but I'm gonna let Jenny, give her own take first
Oh
because
yeah,
I think
me.
you got it. I think I'll let you take the reins of this question because we are an esports show. We do talk about esports, but I think that's one of the most important questions to answer. Before we even talk about anything esports related, just answering the question, is esports a sport?
Mhm.
So I think Jenny, you should, why don't you start with that? Well, what are your thoughts about
Yes.
that?
I think esports is a sport, but
That's crazy.
I don't think it's as hard or as difficult as a traditional physical sport. And just to say, I don't just play video games. I played volleyball, was the captain of my team, multiple teams, played for like 6 years, travel, varsity, whatever. Still playing now. I also did bowling, so I
Let's
might
go.
I might say esports a little bit easier than or bowling is easier than esports, but that's like a
Yeah,
hot
but you're a two
take.
sport athlete.
Yeah, but that I don't think you understand how like bowling like that was kind of insane that I just said that. But anyways, um, yeah. So back to the original question, I think yes, esports is a sport where it's not necessarily physically demanding; it's very mentally demanding. And a part of me also wants to say it's just as hard as a normal sport because these professional players sit in front of a computer for like, I don't know how many hours a day. 5? Up to minimum 5 hours a day? What would you say?
I would argue that they spend probably like I think they work like a 9 to 5 at this point. Like basically 9 to 5 hours. So like 8 to 9 hours, seriously practicing the game with their teammates.
Yeah,
But yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so imagine sitting down at a computer 9 to 5 and just like melting your mind away. Although these like professional esports players like they're very critically thinking and they obviously have strats. They're looking at it more like competitive angle. But once you like have like a mental issue or like a block, I feel like it'd be really easy to get caught and like be unhealthy. Whereas in a physical sport, it would be it'd be very noticeable if you're not feeling well because you're physically not feeling well. Your records and your times are not the same as what they are, and you can only push yourself so hard physically, and until you get sore and tired. But sitting in front of a computer, you can like really keep going. So I can see how some people might say that that's like okay, so esports not a sport, but it's a different kind of sport. I think it has the same learnings and teachings from regular sports like communication, hand-eye coordination, leadership, things like that. Like you learn all of those in traditional sports, so you also learn them in esports. And they're team-based. They have a really strong community. We have broadcasts with like over 1 million concurrent viewers. Like I saw the other day that VCT Champion Shanghai had 1.4 million concurrent viewers. So there's people that also would probably agree sports is a sport. And that's just my take. Yeah. What about yours, Anthony Lowe?
yeah. I mean, I think you already know my answer, Jenny, but I do definitely believe that esports is a sport. But I think you already got
But
through the points why you believe like why we both believe esports is a sport, but to play the devil's advocate here, people say the physical aspect of esports is non-existent. It's just like a bunch of nerdy gamers who sit inside, and they don't see the sun and they just play and sit in front of the computers. Like it's so easy to do that. Or people say like, oh, it's not a real sport because it's not in the Olympics. Actually, it is now, but
yeah,
at
it
the time it
literally
wasn't.
is.
You know, um there's so many different arguments that people have come up with, discrediting esports. But I feel like a lot of those people who have said that they're anti like, oh, esports is a sport, they don't really truly understand how much people have to invest in to get to the highest level. They don't understand that like behind the scenes, we see people in front of a PC playing video games. That's what we do see, but a lot of people don't notice what happens in the background. There's there's lots of, coaches working with the players. That's something that you don't usually see on TV or on YouTube or on Twitch. You usually don't see, how these players practice the game and what they do. Like people, they basically sometimes they play video games together, they practice together, but also there are sessions where they do sit down in front of the screen and basically review the gameplay, watch match footage. It's the same thing as in like American football. You watch the footage, like what is the other team doing? It's the same thing in esports that, what the professionals are doing.
The
Um
strategies.
and and I think we're at this point in esports now where we're kind of bridging the gap between traditional sports and esports. We're kind of using the same systems in a way, like I just said, like there's reviews, like game footage reviewing, like you review game footage. Teams are now hiring full-time sports psychologists to help them, conquer their emotions in the server, when they're in front of a stage, control their emotions, control how they perform in front of a big crowd. Very similar to what traditional sports are doing now. And now I would also argue that, physical therapy, taking care of your health it has been, highlighted a lot more in 2025 than I would say 10 years ago. So I think esports is progressing very rapidly and it's kind of catching up to the same standards that traditional sports has. Um, but it isn't shared, to a large audience. Very niche groups of people know that it's like that. And I think there's still some skepticism because they don't know that esports players are receiving these kinds of treatments or benefits in, as like a professional athlete would.
Like they're actually being paid to play the game, and they work towards being good at the game and playing it and winning, just like any other sport.
Yeah, yeah, and like these professional players are being treated as professional athletes. They sign contracts. They have people helping them outside of the server. It's very official now.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, 10 years ago, you would argue like, the esports players life, like professionals life would be like, "Oh, we're living in a team house. Like we're
Yeah, I
living in a
wanted to
house in
bring that
LA.
up. Yes.
Like we're
Yeah.
living in a house in LA. We all like live in like two different bedrooms. I'm sleeping with my teammates in the same bedroom. Like it's so different in 2025 now than 10, 15 years ago. I mean, people like professional players are still living with their teammates, I would argue, but it's just the way that, they're treated now. Like they have, as I said, sports psychologists, they have coaches, like not one coach, they have a whole staff of, of coaches behind the scenes helping them improve in the game. It's just become so much bigger than what it was 10 years ago, which is for Jenny and I would say it's just one of the best things to see because we do want esports to become big and I would say become on the same tier as traditional sports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so basically it sounds as if we're saying 10 years ago, the answer would almost be no, esports is not a sport, but because of the infrastructure and how these professionals are being supported is it's now a sport. So, I feel like what we're saying is or what you're saying is that because of
Well, you
the
agree with me.
yeah, no, I 100% agree.
No.
Yeah, no, but
Yeah.
you're the one saying it. But um because of like all the support and how they're being treated like professional athletes or traditional athletes, that esports is a sport. But I also want to go back to the whole like team house aspect. I think it's really interesting
Mhm.
to highlight because when I worked with Cloud9, they were saying how their League of Legends team all lives together, their Valorant team all lives together, and their Call of Duty team all lives together. And they like eat together, they do events together, they do like I think they were saying how they have to do physical fitness for at least 1 hour a day whatever it may be, like just stretching or like treadmill or whatever, and they eat together, they do meals, but a lot of what they eat is is Chipotle. Like that's what they said. But you just like I just think about how tiring that can be, and I almost want to say and bring up the idea of esports being harder, because also going back to what you were saying, how the infrastructure is still developing for esports and it has to catch up to traditional sports. These
Yeah.
professional esports players don't like, they have the support now, but there's still so much that they're lacking and they could have more of, where traditional athletes already have that and they don't live, eat, breathe soccer or football. Like, sure, yeah, they practice. They also can practice 9 to 5 or more than 10 hours, more than 8 hours a day. Like, I'm not saying that the best athletes didn't do that back then. They obviously are the best athletes because they practiced, hopefully. But, like, esports professional players can play 9 to 5 professionally, but then they also go home and they play more games just for, like, fun. But then they can't ever, like, escape their team. Like, what if you have like an argument in a scrim, or like you're being petty and then you just have to like live with them? And these people are like on their teams for a really long time. I just feel like it'd be really easily to get, or very easy to get demoralized. And the point I want to focus on is how it can be detrimental to your mental health, which possibly can make it harder than a traditional sport, because physical sports is just easier to tell and easier to stop, whereas with games, just video games in general, it's like an escape, but you can like rot away. You know what I mean? Like, it's easy
Yeah,
to get
yeah,
like
I
caught
definitely.
and like get depressed or something, and then you go back to a home with like your teammates, and it's like, ugh, like you can't even escape like that. I don't know, I just think it's crazy or interesting.
Yeah, I definitely see that side of the argument. Um, and I mean, this is like opening a whole new can of worms here, but there's a certain stigma in esports that, that esports professionals retire when they're pretty young. And when I mean young, like the I would say personally, I think the average age of esports professional retirement is around like 28 to 29 years old. And when you look at like a traditional sports athlete, like that's like prime of their life there. Like that's where they
Mm-hmm.
get their best years of playing. But for esports athletes, that's where people start declining. And I would say like the factor of like, oh yeah, the mental aspect of esports really plays a role into that, because as Jenny said, like you are living with your teammates, you are playing the game a lot longer compared to, a soccer player or a basketball player does, because you need to rest. Like when
You
you
can't get
rest
physically
as a basketball
tired.
player, yeah, exactly. And that's the thing that's so unique about esports is, um when you finish practicing with your team, you're not physically tired. You're still capable of playing the game on your own time.
Yeah, just queue more
And that's
ranked
why,
games, you know.
exactly. And I would say like that has built into a lot of players burning out a lot faster,
But
because
yes, that's the
you're
word, burnout.
constantly playing you're constantly playing the game every day for like 6 to 7 years, and you're probably accumulating hours a lot faster than a traditional athlete. Like when you look at like a basketball player, their knees wear out because they've jumped so high and they land, they dunk the ball, all that stuff. It builds up. But like for esports players, I feel like the rate of burning out builds up twice as fast. I mean, that's a
Mm-hmm.
very I'm just spitballing here. I don't really know if it's twice as fast, but
Yeah.
um that like everything ties in together, as in like esports is still esports is still like infrastructure wise, it's still trying to catch up, and we still don't really know what the perfect balance of game time is for a professional athlete to extend their career to, let's say, like 31, 32, 36 years old, like what traditional athletes have done. Like when you look at like traditional sports, they've had 100 years of physical therapy. Like they've just developed the science to the point where players can play at an elite level until their late 30s, whereas esports players they burn out when they're 28. Like that's not normal for an athlete. You don't just like fall apart when you're 28 years old. Usually
Yeah.
when you say you're 28, you're like, "Oh, this is like the prime of your life," right? So
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
like it's just like I don't want to say I'm a big traditional sports fan. I love soccer. I love NBA. I don't really want to say esports is harder than professional athletes in those sports because, I also understand the journey that professional athletes have to go through to get to that level. And I'm by no means I don't want to undermine anyone's progress, but
But
it is
but
pretty
I do.
alarming.
No, just
No, it
kidding.
is pretty alarming that esports athletes are burning out when they're 28 years old. And that's just due to a different factors that Jenny has said previously and what I have said. And I just think that infrastructure wise, esports just needs to start catching up, and that you can't just be like, oh, 1 year later we can catch up. This just takes multiple
Time.
years in developing the scene.
Hmm.
So, like 10 years ago, people were like eating McDonald's every day and playing 18 hours a day and not sleeping. Like that was like the esports athlete. Now it's, you have like personal trainers, sports psychologists and all that stuff, but esports hasn't really found the perfect way to train effectively yet.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I
and yeah.
agree. I think after talking about it, it does just make me think that it's more burnout rather than harder. So I guess the conclusion is that it's easier to burn out in the esports scene right now than it is to in physical sports, traditional physical sports. And I think the whole like dropping off at 28 is interesting because I had a discussion the other day with one of my friends about like how good and how talented you can be at something and how much is practice. And I think like part of the reason why that esports athletes like drop off so early other than burnout is just because they're like older so they have slower reaction time. But but yeah, no, I think yeah, it's burnout, and the way that esports works is very interesting. I think with like how the peak and when people retire is so early. I
Hmm.
think we can definitely talk about it so much more, but unfortunately, we're running out of time, so I don't think we can talk about it right now. But I think it'd be great to just like go over some topics we talk about in the future. And one thing I want to talk about in relation to this in the future is more about collegiate. I think it's interesting how there's no like way for people to become pro other than like ranked and posting tweets and like playing in tier 2 and tier 3. I think you know how in like regular sports you can have like D3 basketball, D2 like, and you can play travel and whatever. So I want to talk about more regarding that. I did a project about it, so that's kind of why I want to talk about it cuz I think if we trained esports athletes and we like fostered the younger generations, maybe we could see that retirement age like go up and the peak go up because people are like practicing and playing more and just like learning more. So that's something I'd
Yeah.
want to talk about in the future. I don't know what you want to talk about. Maybe just something quick.
Yeah, I mean, I love watching professional esports teams. So personally, I love the collegiate topic because I think we both have things to say about that. But personally, I would say, I would love to talk about, like the Valorant scene, the League of Legends scene, just talking about how, teams are going to perform in the future in international tournaments. I think that will be a very interesting topic that we can both really put our own opinions into. And I'm very excited about that. And if I wanted to spitball another topic, um, I personally I don't really know much about the business side of esports, and Jenny, I know you are a lot more experienced on that end compared to
Mm-hmm.
me. So I would love to hear more about your thoughts about, esports as like a business because there are, a lot of question marks around it. about esports future and stuff like that. So
Yeah, no, I
very
agree.
interesting to hear about that.
Yeah, no, I have a great guest that I could probably bring in for that. So I'm looking forward to it. I think we have a lot of good stuff here. Just want to thank you for listening to the first episode of Team Chat, and we hope to see you next week. And we're going to keep talking about other topics like that. We can expand, and yeah, we appreciate it. Thanks for listening.
All right, thank you so much for listening. Have a good one, guys.
Bye. Sad chimes. I'll be right under their noses.
Okay, Twit.